Hello. If everybody's seated, I will just quickly introduce this, which is it's a moment from a process towards a work. So this is not a work by itself, but it is a moment in which I wanted to test out how the different voices that I was interested in and researching would sound if you would bring them into dialogue with each other. And I have asked 4 readers to help me with this and represent these voices. I would quickly like to introduce them. It is Hanneke Oosterhoff, who is currently writing a biography of Lotte Stam-Beese as her PhD thesis, and she will read the voice and the text of Lotte Stam-Beese. We have Paul Dommela, who is going to read the Hannes Meyer text, since his German is so fantastic. And otherwise in life, he is a great organizer and works currently for Manifesta. We have Hannah Dawn Henderson, who has been helping me enormously in research for, around Pendrecht, one of the areas that Lotte Stam-Beese has been designing in the past. But she will read the text of Hermina Huiswoud, who was a revolutionary about whom we can speak more, but you will also gather from the text who she was. And we have Charles Landvreugd, a wonderful artist, theoretician and performer, and great friend, who will read the words of Langston Hughes, who was very closely connected to Hermina Huiswoud. I want to make one small disclaimer with the text of Langston Hughes. There is the word Negro in the text because it is a text from 1934. This was the term that was used by the writer. So it is not a current text that we are using. I just want you to understand that. I think we will just start, and we can also start the video from this moment. One.
Meine liebe Lotte, ich muss das Anstehende schon in roter Tinte schreiben, denn die Bombe ist nun glücklich heute geplatzt. Ausgerechnet als Weihnachtsgeschenk hat man Natalie über unser Verhältnis bekannt gegeben.
My dear Lotte, I will have to write you the following in red ink, since luckily the bomb has now exploded this evening, just as a Christmas present. They have announced our affair to Natalie.
Ich wusste, dass es kommen muss. Nur eine Woche später, hoffte ich. Jetzt bin ich ganz ruhig und eigentlich froh. Alle Druck der letzten Monate geht von mir weg. Nun gilt es zu handeln. Und wir müssen zusammenstehen. Du weißt es.
I knew it would come. I just hoped it would have been a week later. Now I'm very quiet and actually glad. All the pressure of the recent months is leaving me. Now is the time to act, and we have to stand together, you know that.
Lotte, ich habe gar keine Unruhe. Ich bin ganz still in dir und unwandelbar in dir. Ich habe nur Liebe und Friede für dich. Und ganz unerschüttert stehe ich bei dir. Nur unsere Nerven müssen jetzt ruhig bleiben. Und unsere Kräfte müssen wir für den Kampf nützen. Alle unsere Kräfte sollen unsere beide gehören. Und in dir soll nie Angst sein um mich oder um unser Geschick oder um unsere Zukunft. Ich bin ganz ruhig an deiner Seite, treu, voller Verheißung und voller Vertrauen. Meine liebe Lotte.
Lotte, I'm not worried. I'm completely silent in you and unchangeable in you. I have only love and peace for you, and completely unshaken do I stand by you. Just our nerves have to stay calm now, and our strength we have to use for this struggle. All our powers will belong to both of us, and there should never be fear in you for my fate or for our skills or for our future. I'm very calm besides you, faithful, full of promise and full of trust, my dear Lotte.
Nun musst du sinnen, wo du nach dem 31. Dezember bleibst. Hier in Dessau kannst du keinesfalls bleiben. Während der Ferien sind wir zusammen, aber du kannst anschließend unmöglich zurück in den Unterricht. Meine Einsicht sagt mir, dass dies unmöglich ist, denn es ist eine Herausforderung an das Milieu hier. Wir sollen so reif sein, dass wir nicht überflüssig unsere Feinde herauslocken. Schon heute empfahl mal, dass ich nur noch etwas tun konnte, demissionieren. Ich denke nicht dran, es sei, dass die Lage unhaltbar wird. Wir müssen dazu beitragen, dass sie es nicht wird, denn im Augenblick hängt ja nicht nur meine persönliche Laufbahn, sondern mein Schicksal innerhalb der Existenz des Bauhauses am berühmten Faden. Wir können in der Ferien in Müsse überlegen, wo du hingehen sollst.
Now you have to think where you will be after the 31st of December. Here in Dessau you cannot stay in any case. During the holidays we are together, but you cannot go back to the classes afterwards. My insight tells me that this is impossible, because it's a challenge to the milieu here. We should be so mature that we do not challenge our enemies. Already today I was advised there's only one thing to do, resign. I'm not even considering that. Only when the situation would become intolerable, and we have to make sure that it will not become that, because for the moment, not only my personal career, but my destiny within the existence of the Bauhaus is hanging by that famous thread. We can discuss during the holidays where you should go. 2.
Hannes gave Lotte a job at his architecture firm in Berlin, where together with other Bauhaus students, she was able to produce drawings for the completion of the trade union training center in Bernau. Yet she was not happy there, since she missed her previous daily contact and work with Meyer. He tried to find her another job through his network, but the architect and former Bauhaus student Walter Trallau, now office manager at Otto Heesler's architecture firm in the town of Celle, near Hanover, turned him down. The reason can be found in a letter to his Bauhaus friend Konrad Püschel. Trallau did not like working with women.
3.
Lotte Beese herself...
No. 3 is Hannes.
Wie fühlst du dich in Brno und die Arbeit? Meine Gedanken sind so viel dort, aber oft ziehe ich mich ganz auf mich selbst zurück.
Lotte, how do you feel in Brno and the work? My thoughts are so much there, but so often I withdraw to myself. 4. Hanneke.
Ik toch?
4, er is een nummer naast.
Oh, he said 2 baby, maar goed. Lotte Beese herself also ended up living on a modernist estate known as Uncle Tom's Hütte, Uncle Tom's Cabin, in the Zehlendorf district of Berlin.
5.
In April 1930, Beese began work.
5. It's Margaret Mengel's letter.
Oh. Liebe Lotte, es ist nachts, 1:30 Uhr. Hannes Meyer sitzt oben und arbeitet an einem Schriftstück. Ich helfe zwischendurch tippen. Aber diese Ruhepause will ich benutzen, um dir zu berichten. Hannes bittet sehr um Entschuldigung, dass dir bis heute noch nicht geschrieben hat. Es waren eigentlich seit seiner Wiederkehr aufregende Tage. Ist durch die anhaltische Regierung zum sofortigen Rücktritt gezwungen worden.
It is 1:30 a.m. Hannes Meyer is upstairs and works at the text. I'm helping him to type in between. But this break I want to use to send you a message. Hannes asked me to excuse him, that only today he has written to you. Until today he has not written to you yet. Actually, since his return, these were very exciting days. He's been forced to resign immediately by the Anhalt government. 5b.
Man wirft ihm vor, dass sich parteipolitisch betätigt habe. Natürlich kommunistisch. Man wirft ihm seine marxistische Lehre vor und seine Einstellung zur Kunst, dass die Kunst vom Bauhaus vertreiben wolle.
He's being accused of operating with party politics, obviously communist. He's being accused for his Marxist teaching and his attitude towards art, or rather that he wants to expel the art from Bauhaus. 6.
Meine liebe Lotte, was weiter werden wird, weiß ich schon. Clay hat mich reizend geschrieben. Sie gehen östlich, ich westlich. Morgen habe ich Vortrag in der Assoziation Revolutionäre Künstler, unsere Bauhausarbeit.
My dear Lotte, what now will happen I know. Paul Clay wrote me charmingly, you will go to the east and I myself to the west. Tomorrow I will give a lecture in the Association of Revolutionary Artists, our Bauhaus work. 7.
Lotte Beese and Hannes Meyer kept in regular touch by letter and postcard.
Oh, yeah.
In this correspondence, unlike Meyer, she scarcely ever wrote about her work or working conditions. One postcard she sent him reveals that she had traveled to Slovakia for a Tatranska Lomnica project. Today and tomorrow, I'm at the building site up in the Tatras. You are having a tough time right now. Lots of trouble, lots of work. But all my good, strong thoughts are with you, with all of you. If you can find a use for me, I will come to Dessau. You know, that's all I need to say. You are Lotte. Here she was referring to the problems Meyer was having with his work at the Bauhaus. He was considered awkward and too political, which in July 1930 would lead to his dismissal.
Can you read 7 as well? The letter?
Yes.
That was perfect.
Lieber gutes Hanneslein, dein Artikel im Tagebuch ist gut und ich denke, dass es ein gesundes Abreagieren für dich war, voll fröhlicher Bosheit.
Dear good Hannes, your article in Tagesbuch is good, and I think it was a healthy venting out for your full of cheerful anger. 8.
Liebste Lotte, heute kam ein Telegramm von Moskau, wonach Ludwig schreibt, dass ein Arbeitsfeld bereits gefunden ist für mich. Ich sei herzlich willkommen.
My dear Lotte, today a telegram arrived from Moscow, after which Ludwig writes that a field of work has already been found for me. I am warmly welcome. 9. Hannes? 9 is you.
I'm 10.
But you're 9 too. There is a 15th of October letter.
Entschuldigung. Meine liebe Lotte, Lotte, es wird wohl nichts werden mit dem zum Neujahr kommen.
Nein, sorry, that's not the one. Oh my God. 15th of October, I will just read it in English. 15th of October 1930, my dear Lotte, so now I'm sitting in the center of Moscow in my simple but large room and have the opportunity, viewing over a beautiful square, the Arbarchi Square, to look inside this wonderful city. So far, all is going well. 10. That was the one that I beg you. Ja, genau.
19. Oktober 1930. Ich will dich bitten, doch gleich hierher zu kommen. Es sind jetzt alle Abmachungen in Ordnung. Mit Ludwig habe ich beraten, dass du rascher und leichter herkommen kannst, wenn du als Frau zu mir kommst und nicht vom Ausland her dich engagieren lassen müsst. Du kannst dann hier nach deinem Wunsch arbeiten, denn es wimmelt von Arbeit.
11.
Punishment, removal, reward, re-education, reassignment based on credentials to fill a significant post. Hermie did not know what precipitated their long journey to the east, or who had made the decision for Otto and her to go to Moscow, but she was delighted and content to be embarking on the novel odyssey. It was exhilarating to be transported suddenly from the black Mecca to the red Mecca, to view with one's own eyes the vast Kremlin and the Red Square, to witness the bold socialist experiment, to experience life among the stalwart Russian people, and, most importantly, to share with Otto the place and progress of the revolution. Despite her conviction that James Ford had helped instigate the removal of Otto from his leadership role in the American Party, she viewed their work in Moscow as a logical next step in the efforts to emancipate people of color around the world.
12.
Comintern Fund 495, Inventory 261, file number 1408. Since May 1931, Hermina's membership of the CPUSA had been transferred to the CPSU. During her stay in Moscow, she was selected to attend the short course at the Lenin School together with Hilda Watt and Edith Saunders. She was chosen because the party will be able to utilize her for effective work among the Negroes and women.
13.
The building was occupied by foreign trade unionists and their families. Hermie was assigned a dormitory room when she entered the Lenin School as a full-time student. Otto continued to live at the apartment when he was in Moscow. Contrary to concerns about available housing expressed in the communications from the ECCI, housing accommodations were satisfactory for their entire stay in Moscow. A job was found for Hermie. She was assigned to work with translators in the International Lenin School, using her clerical skills and proficiency in English. For a few months in 1930, she had worked as a stenographer for the Central Control Commission of the party and considered her new assignment in Moscow a transfer.
14.
Thus, within a short time, the Huiswouds were settled in Moscow with work assignments, a comfortable apartment, a maid, 2 sons, and for Hermie a new name, Helen Davis. Hermie worked for 2 years with translators at the Lenin School. The typical week was 1 day off following 5 days of work. In 1931, she also worked on her free days with Ivy Lo Litvinov, the English wife of Maxim Litvinov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ivy Litvinov worked at home, translating writings of Marx and Lenin into English from German and Russian texts. Hermie discontinued working on the project when she sensed an English rather than a Russian attitude towards fellow workers of color. Frequently, Hermie devoted her free day to a voluntary project or subotnik, such as carting stones and dirt in a wheelbarrow for the bed of a new railway line, cleaning the Park of Culture and Rest in preparation for May Day 1931, helping in the construction of the Moscow University, carting away dirt to excavate the construction of the Moscow subway, weeding vegetable patches, threshing wheat, picking tobacco, or unloading a trainload of potatoes. She has stated that she appreciated all the work she did because it made her conscious of the tremendous task entailed in production.
15.
Although living with Hannes Meyer had not been a success, Lotte Beese was now pregnant by him, and she hoped that the birth of the child would bridge the gulf between them. On the 31st of July, Lotte Beese gave birth to a son named Johann Peter, known for short as Peter. Although Fuchs had granted her 3 months maternity leave, correspondence with a lawyer reveals that he refused to pay the necessary allowance. Beese took him to court and appears to have won the case. This did not improve relations between them, and she could no longer return to her job at his firm. Indeed, as an unmarried mother, she was no longer able to find any kind of work in Brno, especially at the time of deepening economic crisis.
16.
Liebe Lotte, Lotte, ich möchte dich gerne sehen, aber wenn du ganz Mutter bist, ich beneide dich um die ruhige Landschaft, die mir so stark in der Erinnerung liegt. Aber vielleicht, weil sie für dich so sorglos war. Jetzt sage ich dir und meine Kinder liebe Grüße.
Early July 1931. Lotte, I would love to see you, but only when you have become fully a mother. I envy you for the calm landscape of which I think often and have good memories. Maybe because it was a very careless time still. Now I send you greetings and also my son. 18.
Life in the party was always serious, but there were occasional lighter moments. For the Huiswoud's work in the USSR was interspersed with cultural events. Huiswoud was able to obtain plush first-tier centre-box seats reserved for the Soviet government officials and special guests at the Bolshoi Theatre that had been reserved for the Tsar. They visited Leningrad as tourists. In February 1932, Hermie travelled to Germany to renew her passport. While they were in Europe, Huiswoud travelled with a Dutch passport, but Hermie used her US passport, which required renewal periodically at the Embassy of the United States. That summer, they rented a room in a dacha available to employees of the Comintern in the Silver Forest above the banks of the Moscow River, where they went to on 3 days. Many friends visited them to enjoy the beach and picnics in the meadow. It was there that they met Maria Ulyanova, the surviving sister of Lenin, who gave them special attention when she learned that Otto had spoken to her brother, Lenin, on his sickbed shortly before his death. Hermie described her as a charming, soft-spoken, tiny, elderly lady who lived in a little cottage. The wooden building was decorated with fretwork in typical Russian design. There was a little garden in front paled off with white pickets. To complete the Russian picture, there was a cherry tree and 2 birch trees like sentinels overlooking the palisades that dropped down to the river. Our hostess offered us cake made from the cherries. I felt as if we were in a scene of one of Chekhov's plays.
19.
As a member of the CPSU, that means the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, Lotte Stam-Beese helped organize proletarian evenings and campaigns, even though by this date the city council had already banned CPSU assemblies, demonstrations and public meetings. On the 30th of October 1931, to mark the 14th anniversary of the USSR, the party organized a pro-Russian demonstration followed by a public meeting at a workers' house in a district of Brno called Tivani. Beese gave a speech at the meeting and was reported to the police.
20.
Liebe Lotte, Margaret sagt mir, dass du schon 2-mal ihr geschrieben hast, herzukommen. Aus deinem letzten Briefe habe ich außerdem ersehen, dass du dich in Brünn als politisch betätigst und dabei mit der Polizei in Konflikte kommst, sodass du mit deiner Ausweisung aus der Tschechoslowakei rechnest. Offen gesagt, fand ich dein Verhalten in der betreffenden Versammlung nicht richtig.
Dear Lotte, Margaret tells me that you wrote her twice already to come over here. From the last letter, I also understood that you act as a political figure in Brno and come into conflict with the police, so that you can be counting on being evicted from Czechoslovakia. To be honest, I found your behavior at the meeting in question not correct. 20b.
Wenn du es ernst meinst mit deiner Einstellung als Parteimitglied, dann müsstest du die jetzige Zeit der erzwungenen Müsse in erster Linie zu deiner Ausbildung als Kommunistin verwenden, müsstest studieren, einfach und immer wieder dein Wissen verbessern, einfachste gesellschaftliche Arbeit verrichten, die dich nicht in Konflikte mit der Polizei zu bringen braucht, und alles tun, um überhaupt die elementärste Dinge zu erwerben, die zum Besitze des Parteibuches gehören. Sonst wirst du unweigerlich eine rote Dilettant werden.
Dear Lotte, when you are serious about your party membership, then you would have to use the current time of forced musing in the first place for your education as a good communist. You'd have to study simply and time again improve your knowledge. Do the simplest social work, which doesn't need to bring you into conflict with the police, and do whatever you can to acquire the most elemental things that belong to having a membership of the party. Otherwise, you will inevitably become a red dilettante. 21.
Was werde ich tun? Ich weiß es nicht. Wenn ich einen Plan hätte, so wäre es dieser. Arbeiten wollen in einem sozialistischen System. Das ist hier unmöglich. In Deutschland scheinbar auch für die nächste Zukunft. Also Russland? Eines ist sicher, dass mich heute in einem kleinbürgerlichen Milieu nichts mehr hält. Auch nicht der Peter. So habe ich innerlich so gut wie allen den Kampf angesagt.
What will I do? I don't know. If I had a plan, it would be this, to work in a socialist system that is impossible here. In Germany, apparently also in the near future. So Russia? One thing is sure, that today in a petty bourgeois milieu, nothing holds me any longer, not even Peter. So inwardly, I already said goodbye to everything. 22.
In the summer of 1932, the scene was enlivened by the arrival of 22 African Americans who had been recruited to act in a movie, Black and White, to be produced by the Meshrabom Film Corporation in Moscow. The group had been recruited by the Cooperating Committee for Production of a Soviet Film on Negro Life, an interracial and international committee chaired by W.A. Domingo. Langston Hughes invited to join the group as a scriptwriter, and 2 recruits with stage experience were the only professionals prepared to work on such a project. The others who had enlisted were not established actors.
23.
In Moscow, we were quartered in the Grand Hotel, a block from the Kremlin in the heart of the capital. It had enormous rooms with pre-Tsarist beds, heavy drapes at the windows and deep rugs on the floor. It had a big dark dining room with plenty to eat in the way of ground meats and cabbage, caviar and something foul, but not much variety. Most of the guests at the Grand seemed to be upper echelon Russian, industrial plant managers and political personages, checking in for a few days, then gone, with whom we never became acquainted.
24.
The script of the film we were to make consisted of an enormous number of pages when I first saw it, entirely in Russian. Just like my contract, it had to be translated. This took 2 or 3 weeks. Meanwhile, all of us Negro Worker comrades, as Moscovits called us, were almost nightly guests of one or another at the great theaters, the Moscow Art Theater, the Vakhtangov, the Meyerhold, the Comintern, or the Opera, where we saw wonderful performances and met their distinguished actors. There was sightseeing by day or nude bathing in the park of rest and culture on the banks of the Moscow River. Finally, after weeks of shows, parties, and pleasures, I received an English version of the scenario and retired to my room in the Grand Hotel to read it. At first, I was astonished at what I read. Then I laughed until I cried. And I wasn't crying really because the script was in places so mistaken and so funny. I was crying because the writer meant well, but knew so little about his subject, and the result was a pathetic hodgepodge of good intentions and faulty facts. With his heart in the right place, the writer's concern for racial freedom and decency had tripped so completely on the stumps of ignorance that his work had fallen as flat as did Don Quixote's valor when good intentions led that slightly demented knight to the battle with he know not what. Okay.
25.
As the key was turning in the door, I heard a gusty, boyish laughter which proved to have come from Langston. He was still chuckling gleefully as they entered, my husband, he, and Lauren Miller. He flung himself full length on his back on the divan after greetings were exchanged, with a contented sigh. They had just come from the Kremlin, where the group had been received by Stalin. We had taken a summer place in the Silver Forest. Many a day during the month of July, some of the group would come out to visit, swim, and later romp in the forest. Almost on every occasion, Langston would be among them. I remember one day, while sitting on the bench, a group of children surrounded us and posed the usual children's questions. Langston was amazed to learn that the little boy, all that distance away, knew all about the Scottsboro boys. Other children joined in the conversation. They told us they had sent a petition from their school pleading for the Scottsboro boys' release. During those months of his stay in Moscow, he kept busy writing. Now and again, he would show me a short story manuscript, which resulted in the ways of white folk.
26.
At the enormous Scottsboro benefits, indoor or out, Emma would be introduced to a cheering audience as our own beloved Negro comrade Emma, who before she came to the Soviet motherland knew the stinging lash of race hatred in her native America. Emma must have been in her early teens when she joined up with a show to leave Dixie, but she could denounce race prejudice in no uncertain terms, in long sentences, in fluent Russian, without taking a breath. At the end of her speech, she would hail the workers of the world, the Soviet Union, and Stalin in traditional form, eyes blazing in her dark face, and walk off the platform to bravos. Had she been in a play, she would have taken half a dozen bow after each speech. They ought to turn them colored boys loose, she would say, for Emma was truly moved at the plight of the youngsters in Kilby Prison. Her Scottsboro speeches came from the heart. It was Emma who first told us that summer that there was a famine in the Ukraine, where she said the peasants had refused to harvest the grain. Living in the Grand Hotel and eating well, or accepting Emma's black market hospitality, I never would have known there was a hunger a few hundred miles south of Moscow. But Emma said, why down around Kharkov? Why down around Kharkov, people so hungry they are slicing hams of each other's butts and eating them? That's no a lie. A Russian I know just come from there. He told me folks is turned into cannibals.
27.
Now, Hannes Meyer had made clear he had no interest in seeing her and their child in Moscow. Lotte Beese needed an alternative. With the rise of National Socialism in Germany, returning there was hardly an option. She had heard of purges at the Bauhaus, in which 15 political active students had been expelled by the police, and the foreigners among them deported from Germany. Working and living in the USSR seemed a better idea. In April 1932, probably with help from Karel Tijge and Jaromir Krejcar, she set off for the Ukrainian city of Kharkov to work as an architect. She left her son Peter with Krejcar and his then wife, the journalist Milena Jesenska. At first, she wanted to make sure the situation in Kharkov would allow her to live there with Peter.
28.
Liebe Lotte, Dass du es puncto Arbeit in Charkow gut getroffen hast, freut mich sehr. Ich wünsche dir, dass diese gute Arbeitsstimmung anhält. Du wirst dich ja überzeugen, dass seit einem Jahr die Dinge wesentlich geändert haben für die Ausländer. Wann gedenkst du, Peter zu holen?
Dear Lotte, I'm very pleased that you've had such good luck with regards to working in Kharkiv. I wish you that this good working atmosphere continues. You will see for yourself that since a year ago, things have significantly changed for foreigners. When do you intend to pick up Peter? 29.
While on tour to Central Asia, the group visited African-American agronomists working on 2-year contracts in the Tashkent area.
29b.
Langston Hughes left the group in Ashgabat to explore Central Asia on his own for 5 months. He returned to Tashkent and spent a bitter cold Christmas in 1932 with the Goldens in Langi-Yule. Then he returned to Moscow to work as a member of the International Union of Revolutionary Writers. During this period, he produced some of his most controversial works.
30.
Shortly after I reached Tashkent, Kuster left for Moscow. I never saw him again until he had become world famous. When I left Kuster's hotel, the next one, I tried took me in, but all they had was one large and very expensive room filled with heavy furniture, including a canopied bed from the days of the Tsar. I registered and went to bed. My bones ached, the cold, the hard benches of the train. The previous night passed on the dirt floor of the caravanserai, no decent food, all caused me to feel sick, very sick, inside and out.
31.
Her name I have forgotten, but I remember that since she did not like to be called Tovarish, no comradeship, we always called her Grajdani, citizen. I arranged to give her a certain sum of money every week for chickens, plus a modest salary agreed upon. To her I turned over my convalescence. Grajdani took excellent care of me. She even made pancakes for breakfast, thin Russian blintzes with sour cream. She was a kind, sad wisp of an old lady, a remnant of the upper classes who had been living in the same hotel since the day of the Tsar. The Soviets let her stay, permitting her a small apartment where she had her own cooking facilities. She had been a woman of means once. Now, well, she said, it would be a pleasure to nurse me and help me back to health, a mere courtesy that any Russian would pay a stranger ill in a foreign land. But regretfully, as things were, she would have to accept the payment I offered her. The sum I suggested, for at first she was mute on the subject, she cut by half. Too much, she said. So, for what seemed to be, to me, woefully little remuneration, she prepared my meals, nursed me back to health, and talked to me by the hour in a flow of Russian, which I began to understand more and more. She aided me greatly in acquiring a better working knowledge of the language of the Muscovites while living in the land of the Uzbeks. The burden of her conversation, and Grazdani made no bones about it, was that she had grave doubts concerning a regime that permitted wild and unwashed nomads just out of the deserts to live in a hotel such as this, one where once barons, diplomats, colonels, majors, and rich merchants from Moscow used to stay. Now the rooms were all cluttered up with Taik commissars, Tatars, young Kazakh communists, Russian mechanics sent to teach the natives how to service tractors, and former camel drivers from yurts in the desert, now delegated to the regional Soviets to make law. The old lady snorted and gave vent to her favorite verbal illustration of the general hopelessness of all this. They don't even know, she said, how to use a toilet. They throw tin cans in it, these tovarishi, then pull the chain. She looked at me lying in bed and added her final coup. Ever since the Soviets came to power, the plumbing has been out of order.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. This was totally unrehearsed, so I'm really, really grateful for all the readers to do such a great job. And I really loved the ending of this script on ever since the Soviets has been in power, the plumbing has not been working, because actually this is only was only covering the 1930s, but it kind of leads into the architecture that my research is moving into afterwards, and what might not be working in certain regimes. But yeah, this was, there's a lot more to explain and to say, but I'm really very happy that you all stayed and listened to this experiment. Thank you.